All right, hey, good afternoon, everybody. I know there was a lot of questions, and I heard at the dinner last night, a lot of people asked me, what is this NBE thing, this Nestlé Business Excellence thing? So that's what I'll try to share with you now. It was announced about 18 months ago, and we basically kicked off with a new team in January 2015. But what NBE is really about is combining three existing organizations within Nestlé into one, with dedicated representation on the executive board, and that would be me. Many of you know, and I spoke to many of you here in this room years ago, when Globe was first established back in 2000. And the objective of Globe, which is one of the three you see there, was to really leverage the size of Nestlé as a strength, and really to avoid that our size and our complexity becomes a liability. So that was 15 years ago why we did the Globe program. And back then, Globe had three objectives. I think many of you even remember these three objectives. One was to harmonize business processes. And at that time, the idea was to find a common denominator, to look within Nestlé, not best in class, not externally, but look within Nestlé and see if we can harmonize business processes, because we were doing things differently in the markets, often for not a good reason. The second was to standardize our data and data management. And Magdi talked about the number of SKUs we had. I mean, maybe you didn't know this, but back in 2000, we didn't know how many SKUs we had in the company. We didn't know how much we sold in a given month to some of our international customers, because we didn't code the customers the same way. We actually didn't even know exactly how many people worked in the company. That was where we were back then. So data standards, data management has taken to a position now which is very important. Doesn't get talked about a lot, because it's not maybe the sexiest thing in the world, but it's absolutely key to what Globe delivered. And the third was to standardize the IS/IT systems, the information systems. At that time, nearly every market in the world ran their own software programs. Every market in the world had their own data center. We had over 100 data centers around the world which were not connected. And so therefore, we have now a single instance of SAP, primarily SAP, that we're running globally, and we've consolidated our data center network to three. And we really have an enviable situation when it comes to our IS/IT platform. But the question is, have we really leveraged what we've put in? And I think the answer would be we have still work to do. And that's, again, one of the reasons why this was formed as Nestlé Business Excellence. So that's a bit about Globe and where we are. You see on the other side, Global Business Services. That was created in 2005, basically to build off of the platform that Globe provided. And today we have an effective but limited network of shared services, and I'll talk more about that later. And the third component, which you heard from Magdi, is Nestlé Continuous Excellence, which, as he mentioned, was really kicked off in the operations community in 2008, and a few years ago now has been expanded across the rest of the group, and absolutely instrumental in how we will continuously improve what we do in this company. So after these 18 months, it's clear that the original assumption that putting these three organizations together has merit is proved to be, I believe, true. So back in March of last year, we put together a roadmap. Where do we want to go? And I'll share with you what that's made up of. But it's basically summarized on one slide here. If we're going to, let's say, summarize why are we doing this, why are we doing Nestlé Business Excellence, at the end of the day, it's really about providing fuel for growth. Again, very similar to that original objective in Globe about this idea of trying to leverage our size as a strength. It will provide fuel in the form of funds or money, which can be then invested behind our products and brands. But I think more importantly, it will come from the focus we will get when employees, people in the market, spend their energy on driving the business, focus on growth, as opposed to being distracted with non-value activities. MBE will be guided by an approach: simplify, standardize, share. Very easy to remember. I think, if you ask anybody in the Nestlé world what is MBE about, this is usually the first thing that will come out. And the reaction, understandably, is a little bit different for each component. Simplify, everybody, is fantastic. The standardize part, not so sure. And the share part is, I don't think so. But the idea, of course, is not that we're going to simplify, standardize, and share everything. It's what can be simplified, what can be standardized, and what can be shared. So when we talk about simplify, You know, we have chosen in Nestlé to compete in a large number of categories, to be present in nearly every geography, and to sell in our products in a wide range of channels. And that's the complexity that gives us a competitive advantage. So we have to be extra vigilant that we do not make our lives even more complicated with unnecessary activities. So that's the importance of simplification. With respect to standardize, and again, it's what can be standardized, we're talking about activities that are not core to our business models. Let me repeat that again. It's about activities that aren't core to our business models. Actually, when done in the right way, standardization can enable more speed, more flexibility, more agility, by at the end of the day eliminating unnecessary variance in the way that we work. And the third part, the share, is really based on the following principles. And this is different than how we've done it up until now. I mentioned that we have sort of a limited, let's say, adoption of shared services. That was because it was an opt-in model. We're moving to something different now. We're moving based on the principles that any activity that's non-business critical, that can be moved, that can be shared, must be shared at the highest possible level, as much as possible above the market level, while delivering the necessary quality at competitive costs. And again, I'll talk more about that later. Now, as in Globe, three objectives. We have three objectives for Nestlé Business Excellence. And the first of these is optimizing end-to-end flows. Now, a little bit of a difference with Globe. In the case of Globe, we sort of looked at it more on a functional basis. But in reality, we know that materials, products, money, and data flow across functions. And it's really the handoffs between these functions that determine how efficient or how inefficient we are. And if we try to optimize just within a function, we miss these opportunities. So what we've done is we've chosen 6 industry standard, these are not Nestlé specific, industry standard end-to-end flows, which capture much of how we do business at Nestlé. So they're source to pay, or how we buy things, order to cash, how we take orders from and deliver to, collect from our customers, hire to retire, how we take care of our employees, record to report, how we capture and report figures internally and externally, plan to execute, how we plan and then produce an idea to launch. So when we started, as I mentioned earlier, Globe 16 years ago, we focused at that time on best in Nestlé. And the difference now is that we're focusing on moving to best in class. So we've actually redesigned these with the purpose of doing that. We've also put in a more formal governance model to ensure and enforce standardization, which is very easy to lose over time unless you do have a very, very formal governance model. And now we have the NCE tools and methodologies to ensure continuous improvement. We didn't have back then. I remember actually it was in one of these meetings when somebody raised their hand and said, well, how are you going to improve the processes that you've wired into then your SAP template? And we didn't have, really the formality of NCE to help us with that. And now we do, and we're using that. So where we stand today, last year we completed end-to-end optimization reviews for the first 4 flows with the involvement of 34 markets, GMBs, and over 240 participants using NCE's Lean Office and Lean Design methodologies. And we found significant opportunities to eliminate, simplify, standardize, and automate key activities. And the remaining 2 flows planned to execute an idea to launch are being finalized really right now, and by the middle of this year, we should know where we're moving on those. So design, developments, and proofs of concept are the focus this year in 2016, although with source to pay, and Magdi mentioned a little bit about procurement, those services to procurement are already in the deployment phase. So new processes, technologies, and organizations should be in place by 2019, again, as I mentioned, supported by a governance model to ensure continuous improvement. The second objective, again, is about world-class business services. And here we look at activities on the basis of whether they need to be in market, because again, they're business customer focused, or whether they can be shared. And by shared, in either a center of scale, you see at the bottom, which are basically transactional activities like accounts payable, order management, payroll, these sorts of things, and centers of competence, which is about executing operational activities that require some kind of skill or judgment, like decision support or treasury, training. But both of those in green, of course, can be serviced above market level. So 10 years after the introduction of Nestlé Shared Service Organization, we have an effective, as I mentioned, but limited network of 5 centers of scale in 5 countries, plus we have 2 sites with a outsourcing partner. So all told, it's about 3,000 people. Now the centers provide primarily financial services and employee services, as well as some workplace solution services, services to procurement, some digital and media social services. But we also have about 70 centers of competence scattered around the world, which have limited synergies and coordination today. So if you look at Nestlé versus other CPG companies, with the exception of information technology, because when we moved into Globe, we moved already into a shared service model. The percentage of services shared above market is significantly lower than the industry average. So if you look at business services, our headcounts and structural costs for back office support is high, and the total number of employees, as I mentioned, in shared services is relatively low, 3,000 out of our over 300,000. The last objective is to support demand-focused organizations, and here we're talking about a few areas which MBE will assist. The first one, lean value stream, was mentioned a little bit by Magdi and I think by Laurent yesterday, talking about how, and you saw in the video, how markets can use these processes and tools to help grow categories and grow market share. MBE will also support the businesses to make better decisions through analytics, moving from simply reporting, which has been more the focus in the past, to predictive and ultimately prescriptive analytics. And also MBE will support consumer-facing digital solutions like e-commerce, social media, the things that you heard just before lunch from Sebastian, as well as the future digital factory that Magdi was talking about. Now, while there are clearly cost benefits, the most significant benefits will actually come in other areas. And these have all been validated in those workshops that I mentioned for the first 4 end-to-ends that we completed last year. One of the biggest benefits we see is in the area of time and effectiveness, where we see really the opportunity for less time spent on administrative activities and meetings, more time for value-added activities, and better analytics for discussion. And just as an example, that one stream, hire to retire, one thing we found out by doing these exercises last year that in the case of of HR, about 95% of processing time is just waiting as it is today because of the complexity. For example, we spend today over 30,000 hours keying in new hire data twice. But in the future, we're convinced with new processes, with new systems, and new organization, which are the 3 areas that MBE is covering, the time to hire, time to onboard, and time to run transactions will be significantly reduced. Speed and agility, another big benefit that we see, allows more focus on innovation, investment behind the brands, and ultimately more flexibility. Again, if you look at order to cash, just one example, and by the way, there's examples across all of the flows. We process about 55 million orders annually, over 250 order processing centers. In some markets, we have 5 different order processing centers for one Nestlé market. And 90% of the orders require some kind of rework today. That rework requires, and that time is soaking up effort from sales reps, who we estimate the 30,000 sales reps we have globally can probably spend up to at least 5% more time with customers if we can be better in how we're handling this. Quality and compliance, very important that will come out of this. Better relationship with suppliers, customers, and consumers, visibility and transparency, and hopefully better audits as well. Source to pay, we buy a lot of stuff. 30 billion in services and indirect materials are purchased annually. Over 100,000 suppliers are used in Nestlé. And again, over 10 million purchase orders need to be reworked. Half of those are on paper. So when you buy in Nestlé, you almost take a step back in time versus when you buy at home. When you buy at home, you're on Amazon.com. You go out DHL.com and see when your stuff is arriving. So we are now enabling Nestlé with those sorts of technologies, sort of an internal type Amazon.com through Ariba Easy Buy, an SAP platform, as well as a vendor portal will be established. But with that will become not just efficiency, but ensuring that we're adhering to buying off contracts that have been established. Cost efficiency, yes, clearly there will be, mentioned about procurement, less operational costs and less structural costs, and these benefits will be tracked within the group's existing initiatives. As Magdi talked about, operational excellence will track. There's going to be MOJI reductions that will also be, of course, tracked. And employee engagement, ultimately, this will make, hopefully, Nestlé a more pleasant place to work with more intuitive, user-friendly tools. And at the end of the day, allow employees to focus on things that really matter, on value-added activities. So at the end of the day, this is an exciting opportunity. In many ways, it's building off the platform that was established for Globe. It's building on the original premise, but it's taking it now to another level. And I think it's exciting, it's important, and over the next 4 years, I think it will put us on a solid path for a bright future. So I was supposed to give you the 4 takeaways. I have 4 in my case, takeaways here. The idea, again, is providing fuel for growth. Again, leveraging size and capabilities, and also allowing us to compete in this so-called 4th industrial revolution. It will enable agility, again through 6 best-in-class now, not just best in Nestlé, best-in-class simplified, standardized, and shared end-to-end flows. We're moving to world-class business services by establishing global, integrated, and again, highly automated. That's important, it's automation in this model. And then at the end of the day, transforming Nestlé with the benefits that we talked about: time and effectiveness, speed and agility, quality and compliance, employee engagement, and yes, cost effectiveness as well. So hopefully that's a little bit of an insight into what MBE is all about. I'm sure there's going to be some questions. Happy to answer them. But before that, I'd like to invite Francois Roger to the stage.